So some of the presentation highlights, what we want to do is just give you a brief background of the Erin Ridge North development and the existing area structure plan, look at the location and the context of the proposed amendments, give you a bit of a statistical summary of what's happening, a very brief overview of the process, and most of the time will be spent for questions. Most of the presentation isn't very long. As a bit of a background, Erin Ridge North was originally approved for residential and commercial development. Starting back in 2010, policies were amended, plan and policies were amended a few times in 2011 and 2013, a few times in 2015, in 2017, and then last year again in 2019. It's kind of the way things go in a lot of development areas and developing neighborhoods. The Erin Ridge North is continuing, and now some market demands have caused another shift in the organization of some of the land uses. So in terms of the existing area structure plan right now, this is a plan that shows how it's laid out. It's got basically divided into two areas. Everything south of Neil Ross Road was considered phase 1 and is more or less completed. And phase 2 is starting to develop, and that's all the lands north of Neil Ross Road. The full text of the Erin Ridge North Area Structure Plan, including all the policies and supporting information, can be found on the City of St. Albert website. In terms of the amendment, basically this amendment is just to redistribute some of the residential areas within the plan area to better meet market demands for housing options. Also includes an update of the land use density statistics and helps to account for what's going on in the urban village site. There's been some more designs going on there, and there's an approved zoning in there. So the amendment reflects some of the new decisions that are being made. The amendment is happening in 3 geographic areas, but there's basically 4 sites, one in the north, right adjacent to the north boundary, one just north of Neil Ross Road, and then the last one south along Coal Mine Road and St. Albert Trail, and what's called the mixed use urban village site. So each of the sites that are identified on this screen, what it shows is site 1 is the largest site. That is currently designated as a medium high density site, zoned R4 and expected to house a number of apartments. That's going down to low density. Site 2 right next to it is currently identified as low density. That's going up to medium density townhouses. Site 3 is going to be low density to medium density, and then site 4 is the update to the DCMU parcel. So a little bit more detail on site 1. There's currently 405 apartment units that have been allocated for site 1 at the very north end. With the removal of the apartment designation, the R4 designation, that's going to go down to single detached dwellings, going to be redistricted to RX and RXL district. And there'll be about 55 or so homes that are going to be constructed there. Site 2 currently has around 26 single family homes. When that gets changed, it's going to go to the R3A district and will house about 63 townhouses, what expected. These details still need to be worked out, but this is an approximation of the kind of units that are going to go in there. Site 3 is going to be changing from 38 single detached homes to about 134 townhouses, and again redistricted to R3A. And then site 4 is the mixed use urban village site. Right now there was identified as 120 mixed use units. That was identified quite a few years ago. Now there's a little bit more information on that site, and it's going to go into 337 mixed use apartment sites under the approved DCMU district. So overall, the impacts are the removal of 405 apartments, removal of 64 single family duplex homes, the addition of 55 single family homes back, and the addition of 197 townhomes back, and the addition of 217 mixed use apartments back. So overall in the neighborhood, there's no change to the total number of units. There's a redistribution of the units throughout the plan area. So this slide shows the difference between the two area structure plans, the existing on the left and the proposed on the right, and then the corresponding changes within each area. As I mentioned, the apartment sites going to the residential, residential going to townhouse, residential going to townhouse again on site 3, and then the mixed use not really changing, but it's included in the amendment area for the stats. We'll come back to this slide when we have questions. In terms of the municipal development plan, sites 1, 2, and 3 are designated as residential. There's no changes. Site 4 is designated as commercial and is being developed as a commercial mixed-use urban village site. Has already been zoned and approved, and there's no changes to that as well. And the complete municipal development plan can be found on the City of St. Albert website again. In terms of statistics for the area north of Neil Ross Road, slight change in the low density residential, but really it's more or less the same. Difference of 9 units, 337 to 328. And again, those change a little bit. These are approximations of the number of units. So there's still quite a few residential units to be constructed in the northeast area. So this is an approximately small shift in low density. Medium density is going up in terms of the townhomes. So change of about 197 units, again, an approximation. In the area north of Neil Ross Road, the mixed-use urban village site is not there, so there's no change in that. But in the area north, there is that high-density site that is being removed and transformed. So overall, there's a slight decrease in the total number of units north of Neil Ross Road, approximately 217 or so units coming down. In the overall neighborhood, same number of low density residential, about 9, more or less the same. The same 197 unit change in the townhomes, medium density residential. Overall, the mixed use residential is now coming up. That's the urban village site, and that's recognized in the overall stats. And then again, the high density is coming down as a result of the removal of the northern site. So overall in the neighborhood, a balance of the same number of units, really no change. In terms of impacts on transportation and utilities, so these changes are not expected to have any impacts on either the transportation or utilities. No roadways will be impacted. Project development timelines. As I mentioned, phase 1 commenced 2010, 10 years ago. Phase 2 has already started, commenced a few years ago in 2016. So the area is developing regularly. Estimated completion right now is 2025, but that all depends on market demands. As for the ASP process, right now you'll see on the left, that's the draft concept and due diligence. That's already been done. That got us to this point. We're holding a public meeting before anything is submitted to gain some information and feedback from the residents and people affected. Following this meeting, we'll take the information that we receive, create the draft technical report, and submit it to the city. I'm hoping to do that fairly quickly. The city will review that through their normal circulation process, and usually takes a few months to get through that. We'll address any concerns. Depending on what comes out of all of that, there may or may not be a second public meeting. Following that process, the area structure plan and rezoning bylaws will be going before council. Council will be holding a statutory public hearing at which everybody will be given the opportunity again to comment to council and give their opinions, and then council, following that, will make a decision on the bylaw. 2 bylaws actually, with the zoning and the area structure plan. So obviously input is welcome. Following this, there's going to be questions tonight as well, but following this, you're welcome to provide any questions or comments to me at the email below, or also to Eric Schultz, the planner for the City of St. Albert. He's on the call tonight as well. you can submit those questions to him and we'll make sure that they get addressed and responded as necessary. And more or less the end of my presentation. So we can get into questions now, short and sweet. So I'll turn it over to Gabrielle now to explain kind of the protocols for going on.
Sure. Thanks everyone for joining us. I know this isn't the typical format that we'd usually do an open house, so I really appreciate your willingness to test out this virtual method with us today. Typically, we'd be mingling around and you could ask anyone you wanted questions, but we're going to have to do a bit more of an ordered situation today. So I will ask that you indicate if you'd like to ask a question in the chat box. You could either type your question or please, if you feel free, just indicate like I'd like to ask a question and I'll direct questions as they come up. When I say your name, you can unmute yourself and ask the question, and whoever's best suited to respond will respond to your question as best as they can. There is an option, some of you who are familiar with Zoom might know that you can virtually raise your hand, but we just find it's hard to keep track of the order that questions are coming in that way. So please don't use that function. Rather, just in the chat box, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. If you move your cursor, there's a little speech bubble that says chat. And then click on it, as Ryan has already figured out how to do, and then we'll refer to you, and then you can just unmute your mic with the button in the bottom left-hand corner. I know some of you are Zoom veterans, very familiar with the platform, and some of you, this might be your first time. So if you're having any issues, just let me know as best as you can virtually. Okay, so let's go to Ryan. You can unmute your mic and ask your question. Thanks.
Hi there. I have a question as to the plan. As it's indicated that medium to high density with the plan as is was section 1 was supposed to have all the medium to high density. Why is it that you guys have decided to, or proposing rather, to move that medium to high density to section 3?
I think that's probably a good question for Landrex. So Mike, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the shorter answer to that is market change and market demand. I know in the last year here we've had some changes in the market, and so that build form is not in a high demand, and especially in this area. And so our thought process behind that was to essentially try and split up that type of development and also try to spread that density around. So we wanted to keep the same density within the neighborhood, but essentially move that density around. And so bringing that down to a build form that is in demand right now was the thought process behind it. And then so that's why the split and also the reduction in the zoning density.
Okay, so it's basically market demand, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for myself, obviously, I was curious as well, and you know, I went to Realtor.ca, and just to kind of have an idea here, within the last 12 months in Erin Ridge North, I found that there's been 5 sales within the categories of, you know, semi-detached and townhome condominiums, and there are currently 4 active MLS listings or Realtor.ca listings. Just to kind of in comparison, I found out that, you know, 37 detached single family homes within Erin Ridge North have sold in the last 12 months as well. Specifically 27 of which have sold within the last, you know, 6 months. And there's 14 current active listings on Realtor.ca. That kind of like, you know, those numbers to me anyway suggest that there is a large demand for single family homes as opposed to townhomes.
You are correct that there is a high demand in single family within St. Albert in general, and even in Erin Ridge. That being said, that wasn't necessarily a choice for Landrex. We had to stay within the densities, and that's why we had a 0 change in density. So we need to conform to those densities within Erin Ridge. And so for us, we're looking at trying to provide lower density forms. So what we had done is tried to put some of that density into the urban village, and then bring down a high density site into 2 medium density sites. So that's kind of as far as we could go with lowering the density, but you are correct that that is a demand in Erin Ridge, is the low density.
I can just add a little bit to that as well. You're right on, Mike, in that the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board does require certain minimum densities, and it is a balancing act that every municipality is having to do right now. And so we can't remove any densities, but there is an opportunity because the urban village site is really intended for that kind of walkability and close to transit and that type of thing. So it does make some sense for that site. It's designed as a mixed use site, and it's intended to have a little bit of a higher density on the site. And so that makes a lot of sense to have some density down there, but we can't just eliminate all the density. And I think Landrex is, probably would like to have a lot more single detached residential, but that's not the way the regulators are allowing things to go. And so we have to create neighborhoods that actually are starting to move more towards higher density areas.
I certainly understand that there's a need for. I'm not asking for multifamily homes to be I'm not asking for just low density homes, right? I'm just saying that there is, from what I can see on the map, there's considerable amount of medium to high density already on the map, and there's even some that's missing that some people have pointed out to me in the while we were all discussing this is the Edinburgh and Elise townhomes. They're not really they're not colored at all or even mentioned on the map, which kind of suggests that there is a fair amount of medium to high density already in Erin Ridge North, is what it seems like to me, right? So,
which are those? I'm not familiar with them.
There's some townhomes on Edinburgh and Elise. That current map that you guys have in your proposed amendment doesn't have that area colored.
They're not districted to that. They're low density 2-family dwellings, so they don't qualify as a multifamily, which is 3 units or more.
Okay, what do they qualify as? From my understanding was they were townhomes.
No, a townhome is 3 units or more attached together.
So I think, sorry, it's Mark. I think there may be some confusion as to which area we're talking about. We're talking about we're talking about Element North, Element Drive North. I think the townhomes, the Eve ones that were built in 2019. Just off of, I think it's the Neil Ross Road. So these were built.
Oh, yes. Those are counted. Yeah, those would be in their stats for sure. They would have counted those in their stats.
Those
yeah.
are counted.
Yeah, so the problem is that these townhomes, the Eve townhomes that were built in 2019, they're not reflected in the map. And they actually failed to sell, and they're now being rented out. So they're not necessarily well received by the market. So I'm not sure if there's an additional need for townhomes in the area, as you asserted on page 2 of your PowerPoint. Those are townhomes. So essentially what our neighborhood has is we have those townhomes. You're proposing more townhomes behind us, and also the Water's Edge apartment building. So it's really, if you look 3 ways, with the exception of looking behind, we have multi-family dwellings in our neighborhood. So I'm wondering why you wouldn't reflect the Eve townhomes in your map.
Again, I'm just thinking if these are the ones, is that the ones that everybody's talking about?
Yes, I think those are them, Chuck, because they're being built, whereas the other areas that are being amended are built. Yeah. So
they're identified in here as medium density.
I believe that sorry, this is Lisette. Ryan may be talking about the Encore townhomes. which it's right now listed as residential, and it's just on the other side of Neil Ross Road across from section 3, the highlighted section 3.
One?
Yeah, so that's that is multifamily. That's 59 units of townhome and duplex product that he's referring to. That's showing as residential right now.
Okay. Do you know what that's zoned, Lenore?
It's C2.
C?
It's Stephanie from Landrex. I believe that site is zoned as R2, and R2 is low density residential, which is why that's reflected as yellow on the map.
That is correct, Stephanie. Not to discount this, but we have quite a few questions going, so maybe we should carry on with some of the questions so we can hear what else people are thinking about.
Yeah, I do appreciate everyone chiming in to help clarify Ryan's question. That was helpful. Margaret, do you have another question in addition to your comment?
I have comments. Are you
Okay, go ahead.
comments? Yeah. So maybe I'll start by saying that we were the first in our neighborhood, and we purchased on Erin Ridge in 2018. The original plan was to have green space behind our house with the possibility of detached homes. That's what our real estate agent told us, that the possibility of detached was certainly there. So the new plan, what it does is it increases development behind our house, essentially from 38 single family homes to 134 townhomes. And behind that, we would also have duplexes. And as I already mentioned, we also have the Eve townhomes. So just so you know, my husband's on the call as well. So it's Richard and Margaret here. So the original plan that you have on the website had a nice balance of both traffic, noise, and general distribution of densities. This new plan, we believe, is clumping more high density into really quite a small pocket in St. Albert. And we believe that the winning formula is more of a balanced one. As I already mentioned, the Element Drive North Eve townhomes are not reflected in the map. I think the scale is a little bit off, because I think that there are, just thinking of walking down the street, at least 8 to 10 built, and I think that's supposed to be quite a large area for those 3-story townhomes. And as I mentioned, those haven't been well received, and actually all of them have been rented out, and there's still a sign in front of those townhomes incentivizing people to rent. I would also add that single family homes are selling in our subdivision at a reasonable rate, despite the economy, despite lower or really low oil prices and the temporary effects of COVID-19. We are seeing on our street several single 2-story as well as bungalows being built. They're all under construction, and there is demand for those single-story homes. As I mentioned, the subdivision is surrounded by high-density dwellings, Neil Ross Road, Element Drive North, and as I mentioned, the Waters Edge apartments. So we bought into this neighborhood for the long term. In 2019, St. Albert was ranked the top city in Alberta and 23rd across Canada. We moved from Ontario actually to live and work in a city. And we didn't buy into a $600,000 home to be really boxed in by high density developments. We believe this will contribute to a devaluation of our property and for our neighbors in this area as well. So for us, despite your presentation, the net difference is not zero. This will have an impact on us and our bottom line. So we ask that the original plan development be retained. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Lizette?
Hi, perfect. So I guess have a question and then a comment as well. So is there plans, just on the Eve website, it says that there's 76 units planned. Is that project still going forward, and is that reflected here in the numbers, or is that remaining at, I think there's maybe 12 built? Like, were your numbers based on the demand for that? It's still not a complete project.
Well, I can answer partially. My numbers are based on the area structure plan, but I think, Mike, if you have any more information on the details of the site development and how far it's progressing and what the numbers are expected, do you have any of that information?
I don't have any information on the site specific. I know that there was a bit of a pause to reflect the site itself and maybe a bit more of a marketing strategy and just a more of a regroup for that site. But I do believe that the intent is for it to still be the site that it was planned for originally, with the I think it was 60 or 70.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact number. And so that answers the other one. Was there another question on top of that?
Can I just interrupt? My apologies. So there is a pause on those. There's, I believe, 9 units built so far. They were highly advertised at the beginning of this year for sale. They did not sell, and they are being rented. So the advertising right now is for renters to attract renters. So the demand for those townhomes, to me, is not evident.
Yeah, and I don't know the specifics on the approach that they had there. That's separate from Landrex. So I don't know if, all I know is that there was a regroup. I know that they went rentals, and then since then I think there was another kind of regroup to see is rental the right form, or is it back to ownership? So I don't know where the update is on that.
Okay.
Lizette, did you have another question, or was that?
So I just wanted to know, about those 76, if those were continuing on. And I guess just based on that, so 76 units there, the 59 R2 in just off of Lease in Edinburgh, and then across in Jensen Lakes are 104 townhomes with 100 duplex units. I'm in real estate, as well as I just moved from a multifamily townhome site. And the market is super saturated with a lot of like products. So I'm wondering what the draw would be for townhomes in that site 3 when there's nothing, there's no amenities. For example, in Jensen, there's a lake, there's the commercial right there. What the draw is to put it right in the middle and concentrating all of your traffic in the middle of this phase, which is right across from lake backing and park fronting lots, which would be a higher end product. I just don't understand why it wouldn't go up into section 1, 1 and 2, which makes more sense to keep those near thoroughfares, as well as in an area that isn't quite ready yet, but that top right hand corner there, where there's exits onto that future Neil and Ross Road, which would then disperse your traffic to keep more of that family oriented feel, as well as traffic to keep the value of the lots up. Because from my understanding is when the builders buy the lots, they're on the hook for it. And wouldn't that hurt your builder relations as well if now they have to sell like devalued lots? There, I don't know what the demand would be for the higher end lots down the road.
I can take a stab for a bit, Mike, if you like. So just some of the planning considerations. We kind of like to try to disperse some of these sites in different areas. You want to give give some of them amenities, but they also are opportunities as well, where there's maybe a little bit more challenging areas for site configuration. Some of the maybe a condominium approach or a smaller dwelling units help you to manage the site configuration a little bit. And this site has kind of an off area, like it's a little bit wider. The Neil Ross Road comes and curves around, and it narrows a bit. So that can be challenging when you want to try to fit in lots efficiently. So that's one thing that's considered. There is a collector roadway that connects Element Drive and goes over to the north. So certainly that's an area where we generally look to put some more medium density on those collectors. That's an opportunity for that. And you know, having it reasonably close to the commercial is also a good idea. And there's nothing wrong with it moving to the north as well. But some of the areas that are going to the east and to the north, I think there's probably some future considerations that may be coming once the annexation finishes up, and how things are going to go out that way, and that is still a ways away. So we don't really know how that's going to go. Right now, we have to try to keep within the guidelines that we're required to keep to keep the densities up a little bit, and try to disperse some of these different types of housing forms throughout a neighborhood and in areas that can make some sense. And so that's kind of some of the decisions there.
So based on that formula, could this change again? Like, is section 3 the next phase that would be created, or is section 2? Or, you know, because as that demand changes, we always see these map changes. What would the schedule be for us as residents to expect?
Yeah, well, the area has been developing for 10 years now, probably another 5 or 6 years left to go, and there's been 6 or 7 amendments. And this is not uncommon and not specific to Erin Ridge. I basically do this for a living, and we make plans evolve all the time. Markets change, demands change. When Erin Ridge first started, you'll see in the southern areas, lots were quite a bit bigger, and you know, the housing product was completely different back in 2010, 2011 than it is today, and it's likely going to continue to change. You know, so right now, this is the best shot at what we think is going to work, and there's not that much time left. 5 years is very small, so the likelihood of wholesale changes is quite small, but it's not necessarily unforeseen that you could see another change. But we're kind of nearing the end, so the amount of changes the ability to change is a little bit less. You know, if you get into a larger area where there's you know, still 10, 15 years worth of growth left in development, it's quite likely that things could change. So it's hard to say if there's going to be any more changes. I would say it's possible, but you know, right now, this is kind of the crystal ball that everybody's looking at and saying, okay, this is where we're at. You know, the apartment site really isn't something that was necessarily working. The urban village site is a better choice for some of that, and so we're making some adjustments based on what we see today and where we see things going right now.
Okay, thank you. I know it's taking a while to get through everyone's questions. I hope that the information being shared is helpful to you, though, in answering some of your questions, maybe ahead of time. Carol? If you're speaking, Carol, we can't hear you. She's gone. Carol, if you're still on, if you could just type your question in the chat box, and then we will get to you right away. In the meantime, Brittany?
It looks like Carol's going to be typing her questions.
Okay. I think while Carol's typing, let's answer Brittany's questions and then we'll address Carol's questions. Brittany, would you like to go ahead? Oh boy. I'm not sure why we can't hear either of you. I'll just read through some of the comments. Confirming that Eve Townhomes was approved for 24 units, 10 units have built. 7 single homes are currently being built on Encore and Edison. 9 units built so far. Requests that planning needs to be integrated. Agreeing with Lizette, the original plan had a balance in both traffic, noise, and general distribution of densities. Okay, I'm going to hop to Candace in the meantime.
Hi, thank you. I just have a question in regards to that going from approximately 30 single family homes to approximately 100 plus townhomes. The infrastructure in Erin Ridge on Edison Drive, the amount of traffic to come out there to meet the commercial intersection, how is that going to be handled?
I can probably respond a little bit, but maybe Dawn might be able to. Just generally speaking, we've looked at it from an overall perspective and the fact that it's a collector roadway. We haven't done a detailed traffic impact assessment at this point, but generally speaking, from the collector road system and the capacity on that collector road system, the expectation is that there's enough capacity both on the collector roadway and the intersection. But Dawn, if you have any other comments.
I do not have anything in addition to what you just said, Chuck. So.
Okay, and then my other question is, there was a proposed plan to have Belrose High School moved just north. Is that still something that's being proposed and talked about, or what's happening there?
I can answer this one. Landrex is in communications with the school board and now just recently with the province, and so we are trying to persuade the province that with support of the school board that that north area there is a highly favorable location for a high school. I know the need is there as well in St. Albert. So we're going down that path to try and make that happen. That land is still needs to be annexed, and I believe slated to be annexed for January of next year, I believe, is the plan for that. So there's still
2022, not next year, 2022.
Sorry, next January, not this January, but next January. Yes, 2022.
Okay, so the amount of traffic in regards to like Element Drive North and coming out on Edison, it would be concerning when you have families.
There will be another connection out to St. Albert Trail, right where that proposed high school will be. So that's going to be the connection to the traffic to that high school.
There would also be additional connections to Neil Ross Road and to the north. So anything that's happening in that future area, there'd be a lot of technical review, traffic, servicing, all that kind of stuff that would have to go on before any of that stuff happens.
Yeah, just on a personal note, we did just recently moved to St. Albert in April and bought in this area because our children started school here in last September, and we were really impressed with the area and that it is single family homes. You had, best of both worlds, and with the proposed future park and all of that, the green space, the Lois Hole School, I mean, that road in itself in the morning is a nightmare. And there's been many of concerns there. So I just can't imagine, with buying off of that main road, this is a huge concern with little kids on Edison Drive, increasing that much traffic.
Okay, I'm going to read out Carol and Brittany's questions. Just we have some people who called in, so they can't read it out of the chat box. So we'll answer Carol and Brittany. Then I know Ryan, you had virtually raised your hand, and then we'll answer Carol's other questions. So the questions coming down the chat box. I'm just trying to respect the order that these questions are coming in. So Carol backs onto Ebony Way, where the urban village is planned. She says, I understand there's going to be a 4 and/or 6-story apartment building backing onto Ebony. My first question is, why would you not build these apartment buildings on another quadrant of the space? Having a multi-story building looking down on my home makes absolutely no sense. It could be built on Coal Mine Road, St. Albert Trail, or backing onto the car dealership. I echo Margaret's comments that this will devalue my home.
Mike?
I can elaborate a little bit. So the zoning in the urban village is a DCMU, so it's a mixed zoning of commercial and residential, and so all of the plans that we have moving forward for that site are within those zoning guidelines. We have taken into account the existing residential and existing commercial around the area when we were planning that site. We are still in preliminary stages right now, so we are within those zoning requirements. As we move forward in our plans for this area, we will want to share that obviously with the neighborhood and the community, because we are excited with this area, and we do, the intent of this area is for it to be a walkable urban village boutique style area. So we're hoping that the community can walk there or use it and be accessible to it, readily available.
Just another comment from Carol that she had talked to the mayor and who couldn't understand why it was being built there either. She doesn't feel like you have answered her question. Maybe we can chat a bit more about that after. I'll just go through a few other questions. The answer might come through some of these other comments. So from Brittany, yeah, sorry, Brittany, we couldn't hear you. St. Albert City Council passed an amendment to the land use bylaw on November 30th to allow for single family 0 lot line development. This was done so developers could meet the new EMRB density requirements without relying on duplexes or townhomes. Has Landrex considered this, especially considering the recognition of demand for single family homes?
I can talk about it for a minute, and then Mike, you can add in a little bit. But single family homes on itself will not meet the density guidelines. It's certainly a good step in the direction of trying to get more ground-oriented residential development going. The market wants it. Affordability is going that way, but it's simply not enough to meet the guidelines that are being required. Mike, you want to comment further on the market?
No, I think you had it spot on. Is it does densify the single family. I don't think it bridges the gap enough to get us to the overall density for the community. But we are hoping that as that build form becomes more popular and used more, that we could try and use that as a density bridging of some of this stuff. But I don't think it's going to get us to where we need to with total densities.
Okay, so just hopping around a little, I know it's a bit jumpy, just trying to keep a handle on what's coming through the chat box. So Ryan, you've been waiting for a while. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, just about the densities. If we were to retain the original plan and go with, for section 1, remain as medium to high density, and keep section 3 as it's intended to be originally as low density, would that not meet the density requirements in the area?
We are right now meeting the density requirements or getting close to them. We approached the density requirements. So if we left the plan the way it is, we're there. We don't want to actually change the density requirements at all, but the proposal is to try to reduce the density north of Neil Ross Road and take advantage of some of the attributes of the urban village site and the mixed use site. To replace some of that density.
Okay. So we're currently with densities, we are good if you were to retain the original plan. So my concern is, and I guess I'll go into my comment here, is that this change, it doesn't need to happen based on density. And considering what I was speaking with Mike about earlier was that there is a higher demand for single family homes as opposed to townhomes and condominiums. So with that in mind, I believe that the keeping the original plan would be sufficient. It would allow for multifamily homes, would allow our homes to have single family homes as was planned, because I purchased my home this August of 2020 with the understanding the land behind my residence would be low density single family homes. So this plan that we're doing here is going to affect people who own land currently within the Edison and Encore. It's going to create higher density traffic regardless of other access points on Neil M. Ross Road. And that'll affect quality of life, a lot more noise, a lot more traffic, which is a big concern for me. As well, it's going to affect me personally, me and my family personally, because it will decrease the property value for my home, which will be backing onto these condominiums. It'll affect the property value considerably. And I just believe the original plan would allow for all parties to be satisfied, and I don't see a need for it based on the current sales and that I've already talked to Mike about. And I just, it would allow us to have no increased traffic, no increased decreased property value, and we would be able to receive what we were told we were buying into, which was single family homes in our area, as opposed to numerous townhomes.
Okay, thank you. Al Tingley, still on the call?
Hi, yeah, thank you. The original plan must have met all the requirements, and you've already said that it did with respect to density. So the reason that you're telling us that you need to change this plan is because of market research, and I'm echoing a little bit, but the market research that we see, there are two high-end townhome projects near us, and I live on Encore, but in Erin Ridge North, there's one that was started on the southern part of the community, and it's been for sale for years now, and there's still signs for sale. The Eve project that we heard about is nothing sold there. So market research, and I'm a real estate investor too, says that townhomes here don't sell. So are the townhomes that you're going to build behind us going to become rentals like these other ones have? And with that, the traffic that's added, as we've heard, to Edison from the existing plan now of roughly, napkin math says 76 cars a day to and from there, to over 180 cars on that street. That street is sold out with small families and a few empty nesters, but it's dangerous. I wish that you would stick to the original plan. We bought in, literally and figuratively, all of us, to your plan. The plan that you made, Chuck, for Mike. Mike, you guys believe that single family dwellings are selling here. You have 3 going on within a stone's throw of our house here right now through your subsidiary Dynasty. And So you have to believe in the original plan, imploring you to stick to it.
Yeah, not to, go too far down this path, but the single family homes are not changing in numbers. I know I get that it's impacting people on the call, and that's why you're here, and we respect that. The difference, the change is happening between the apartments and the townhouses. The singles are about a wash. It's the apartments that we're removing and replacing with townhouses, and moving them to the south. So the difference is about 200 units or so that are coming out of the area north, and the single families are more or less a wash. But and like I said, I get that it's the location that's a concern.
Yeah, sorry to jump back in, Chuck. But the plan that we bought into had single family homes, so that's all that I was referring to.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to read out two of Carol's questions in the chat box. So her second question was, if this is going ahead?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, who's speaking?
Okay, awesome. First, I just want to go back. My original question was not answered, which was, why wouldn't these walk-up apartments be on a different quadrant of the space instead of backing onto these homes?
Sorry, I'll answer that. There's a bit of back, so I'll try and answer the question. The entire when you say quadrants, we're looking at the site as a whole. So I'm guessing you're saying closer to the eastern area as a quadrant.
I'm suggesting that it could back onto Coal Mine Road, St. Albert Trail,
or the car dealership.
And they are. So right now what we have planned there is a mixed use building, an apartment style building, and an assisted living building. And so those are the three, and also CRU commercial style as well. And so they are, as you can tell, that is 6 buildings. And so we have incorporated them as best we could within that area. And so looking just at adjacent, the area adjacent to Easton, we do have an assisted living, and part of the apartment building is going to be on Ebony Way. We do currently have it planned to have some parking at the front of that building. So that building is set back quite a bit of ways from Ebony. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, much better.
Okay, thank you, Carol. I'm glad that you were able to connect. A question from David Wolf in the chat box. Is this property considered for upper end condo, as the area has great access for shopping and the access to the property is with low vehicle access and across from upper end residential to the east?
The intent and the plan is to integrate it within the community. That being said, when this project does come about, we have to establish the market at that time and understand what that build form is. We know that the densities are within a range of that zoning, and so our first thought is to be closer to possibly the bottom end of that zoning range, just to get more of a build form of a townhouse style looking product, as opposed to more of a higher density in the medium density zone. So that is the intent. However, it's zoned for these densities, and so that's the potential of where it can go, but that is our intent. Is we want to integrate it as best we can into the community. So that obviously goes with the architectural controls that are within the community as well.
Okay, I'm just going to read out Carol's remaining questions. So if this is going ahead, what is Landrex going to do to make a visual barrier between the $1 million homes and a multi-story apartment building? Are there plans for a berm with trees? And also regarding the trees on the boulevard on Ebony Way, I understand that Landrex put in a proposal to the city of St. Albert for additional trees, but the city turned it down. I'd like to hear from Landrex and the city on this question.
So I'll talk a little bit about the kind of barrier. So right now we do plan to have more landscaping along Ebony and also along Coal Mine Road as well too, as we do want this space to be more of a pedestrian walkability space. That being said, we, as my last comment, we do have a parking lot there as a distance buffer as well. Having a berm there, I don't know if the space or if it technically works to have a berm there. I think a berm would have to span a width of quite a ways in order to get height on a berm. So I think what we're trying to do is utilize the landscaping to have that same effect.
Okay, I'm just going to hop to Matthew's question because I think a lot of people on the call have this question. If you're meeting the requirement with the plan as it is today, and I think that's referring to the density requirement, why reallocate?
So I think this goes back to market. So I think everybody on the call, I think, is on the same lines as single family is definitely a demand, and we see that too. And you know, a part of, you know, if it was up to us in a small way, we would like to have as much single family as we can. However, we do understand that we need a certain density within a community, and we do know that we need to have several built forms in order to create demand for all people that want to live in St. Albert. And so that being said, we do have the single family, and we do want to bring on some of that medium density townhouse type product as well. And so we want to keep the densities the same, but we want to change the build form. In order for us to do that, we have to split that original density and try and get into more of the medium townhouse density.
Okay, Margaret, you have a question about guidelines.
I think it's actually been answered. It's the same question people have asked around why are we suggesting moving around the various, well, the proposal change really if the change is net zero. I do have a question. I'm just following up on Mike's comments. I don't actually think you're answering the question. The question is why the shift from the existing proposal to the proposal that is in the PowerPoint, and how do you envision selling single family detached homes right next to a Dodge dealership? Just wondering how that would pan out for people interested in single family.
So it goes back to market demand. And I understand some of the comments are saying that Eve is a townhouse type site and it's not selling. And so I don't know the specifics on that site and why it's not selling, and it could be it's not the right price, and it could be a lot of the style of it. It could be a lot of different factors. When we did some market research, it had shown that apartment style within the last year, we did market research, that apartment style is quite a bit less demand than it would medium density townhouses, and obviously medium density townhouses is far less demand than single family. So with all of that information and keeping the densities the same within the neighborhood, this is the proposed plan. So that's around the decision that was made on that.
If I could just comment, I would really recommend that you refresh your market research. This group has done a little bit of it, but I do market research as part of my role at a university, and I work in integrated planning and assessment. And I would highly suggest you refresh that, because COVID has really changed the landscape. So what you did a year ago around the needs of people is quite different than what you would get now. People are actually looking and moving to single detached homes and actually recreating the architecture and also the design of their layouts as a result of COVID. So we're looking at changes in design, things like less open kitchens, for example. People want more the ability to close a door and work from home, because this is the future. My own university is actually moving fully virtual, so I won't be going back to an office. I will be working from home. So highly suggest that you refresh that market research.
And I think we do agree with you and probably the rest of the callers that the market research and the demand is going single family, and that is because of a space thing. And so as talked about, we would love to have a lot of that product type. However, we have to keep within the densities, and to try and lessen our densities to more of the market demand, that this is the proposed option for us on the table.
Okay, back to the comments. David had said more control of the design would not reduce land value. And Brittany has a follow-up question. Why wouldn't the development not be able to meet density requirements with 0 lot line single family homes? The developer in North Ridge did this exact thing to meet these new requirements.
I can talk again a little bit about that. It's not that it wouldn't, just low density by itself just cannot meet the density requirements. It has to be some form of medium density or higher density opportunities in order to meet the 40 units per hectare that we're required to meet. That's on an overall basis. We have to get areas or pockets or something of additional density in given locations, because we just can't get there by just having single detached residential. The lots are just too big.
And to add to that, Chuck, Northridge Phase 2 does have multifamily sites that would bring those numbers up.
Okay, thank you. And apologies if you're hearing kitchen noises in my background. That's the reality. And so, Carol, don't worry about the echo. We're all just doing our best. So again, thank you for being patient with us as we use this virtual format. David had a comment. This property location is bad for single family residential, as the access to St. Albert Trail would invite more illegal activity. Margaret had asked a question for Mike. Why the need the water extension? Why not keep it as land for more homes to spread out densities?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Margaret, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, it was just when Mike was talking previously around density, which I think it's irrelevant to our conversation. We meet the densities in the guidelines with the existing plan. So when you were talking, Mike, about the densities, the whole water extension, it was just a kind of a side comment. It's not really a question because it's irrelevant at this point. We meet the densities with the existing plan.
I'll read a few more comments. David, a secure upper end condo complex properly designed would bring great value to the area with secure basement parking access. Al, true, if you could sell it, that's what Eve was, should be Chev. Brian, but they're not selling, so why are we building townhouses? We've met the density requirements, so continue with the original plan. Amy, sorry, we literally moved because of COVID for more space for the kids. Ryan, I agree. We have already established that density requirements have been met with the original plan, and there is no need for a change. Matthew, you're within the density today as the plan is. Candace, why are we talking density? You meet it. Ryan, I would like to ask another question, please. Okay, sorry for reading those all out. I just know we have some people calling in on the phone who can't read the chat, so you get my narration of that. Ryan, go ahead.
Hi there. So I guess I'm just kind of following up with everyone else's question. We keep asking the same thing, and you guys are referring to the density again, saying that the reason why we have to do this is because of the density. But we've kind of already talked about it, saying that the density is met currently as is. So I'm wondering why, like you mentioned, you had to change the build plan, but the density requirements are the same now. Then why the need for the change if the density requirement is there? Like it just seems to be, you seem to be repeating that there's the density requirements need to be met, but you've already said that they are met. So I'm just curious about that. Thank you.
I can jump in just quickly about that, because the impetus for the whole thing started, I think, with the apartment site and the problems and lack of market acceptance, I guess, if you want to call it that, for that apartment site. And so that apartment site housed 405 units. And in order to remove that and try to get something that was more appropriate for the market, that's the density that we're trying to manage. It's not the single family. There's lots of that, and they want to keep that. They want to try to keep that as much as possible. But it is the removal of 405 units off of that apartment site that is causing the shift. And so we're taking that, putting part of it down into the urban village site because the site can handle that. And then the balance of that, we can't take that all up in just singles, because there's just not enough single family density to make that. We have to balance some of that back into townhomes. That's the shift.
Okay, so I understand that you're trying to shift that. However, density requirements are met now. I'm just saying, you know, just to further echo my previous comments about how this affects everyone in Edison and Encore, it's just, it essentially just makes it very, like, if we had known about this, like we bought into low density homes, if we had known about this, if I had been looking for a home in August, if I had known that there were going to be medium to high density right behind the property that I was purchasing, it would have affected my choice for sure. And I'm sure it would have with numerous other residents as well. So, you know, we bought with the understanding that there would be low density homes here. So, you know, for you to say that, you know, the medium density is met, but we have to change this, that's quite concerning, and it's going to be affecting a lot of us. So I hope you take that into consideration.
We have a few comments in the chat box, kind of proposals of alternative solutions. So one, if there is a need to make this change, which seems unclear, why not move the medium density away from those of us who bought already? And a similar comment, could you not alter the roadway plans in the upper right-hand section to widen the lots as noted in section 3 and place the townhomes there to maintain lot values on existing lots and in future lots around the lake and park space? Just maybe something to take home and work through.
Mike?
Yeah, just to comment on that, you know, we had sat down with WSP and really had a good hard look at this and had looked at, you know, trying to fit these sites into all sorts of spaces within, and so what had happened is we were looking for this density to be close to a major arterial, be on a collector, be close to a park, be close to walkability and also be as close to the commercial as possible. And that's kind of the thought process behind any increased density besides low density. And so after a lot of consideration and reiterations, these were kind of the best spots we could find for the look of the entire community and how the community would function in its whole when fully built out.
Another comment from the chat box agreeing it would have definitely affected all of our decisions. What do home builders think about this? I'm sure this will be affecting the future sales of this area also. There any other, I hope I haven't missed anybody. Another comment from David, upper end 4-story condo project equals proper density equals good landscaping and proper design equals increased land value for nearby residential property with less illegal activity. No berm, just proper landscaping. Candace asks, can you explain the decision to move the 405 doors? Why did it fit the original plan and now not a good site?
I can comment a little bit. Again, it's the information on the 405 units. That was a requirement as we were going through the original ASP back in 2017 and trying to capture and meet the development guidelines. That whole area was actually off the map. It was a hole in the map, basically. There was no plan for that area, and we were compelled to create some density for the area, and the decision at the time was to lump it all together and put it into an apartment site at the north end of the property. That seemed to be the best place for it at the time. And I think Landrex since that time has kind of looked at what's going on in terms of the need for apartments and that type of built form, which is going to be obviously quite high, and it just doesn't seem to be there. We did need to put it someplace, but at that time that was the best place for it. So
sorry, it's James, Candace's husband. So basically that was a preliminary plan just plunked in to meet your guys' density off the original, and now you guys want to move it around.
Well, it was
a short answer.
Yeah, it was the best fit at the time for sure. I mean, it's close to the collectors, it's close to the commercial. It was a consolidated site itself that you could get that density on it, and so it did make some sense to put it there.
Sounds like a great site to me.
So, yeah,
similarly,
me too.
Margaret's asking why not townhomes in that same spot.
Possibility, I guess. I suppose that's something that we look at. It'd be something up to Landrex to see in terms of how it all fits and what their market's all about as well. Mike, you want to comment?
It's Richard, Margaret's husband. Could you guys please take a look at that proposal just to keep the town, because if that area was good enough, when you guys were just penciling it in for a high density, then it certainly would probably be not hurting the existing property owners that bought into this area, knowing that this would be a low density area. We don't mind that area by St. Albert Dodge being a little bit busier. It has a runoff onto the highway. It has access to the arteries that you're talking about. And if it was good enough for a high density area, it certainly will be a good enough area not to disrupt the existing area that we're currently being surrounded with higher density properties. So if it was good enough for high density, I think it would be something to please consider for townhomes in that spot. I mean, this is originally why we bought here. This was what was originally planned. And if you guys just doodled it in that, oh, this would be a good spot, and now we're facing the consequences of that, then please doodle that in as a possibility, if it is possible, to put the townhomes where it won't affect the owners of homes that already bought into this area for their children. We have 2 children. There's many children on this road. This will be just higher anxiety for me as a parent, having more density, more noise, more traffic on the roads here? Thank you so much.
Just a comment on the location of it. So I think there was two constraints. One was the density of it, of course, and the build form of it. The other one was the size of it as well too. So through the market in the last year as well is a size of that, which I think is 7 acres or so, is quite a lot for somebody to take on with an apartment style build form. And so I think there was the two constraints on the market research was the size and also the density as well.
So there's a question, what density does section 1 house? And I'll just read the next comment, the next few comments too. I'm sure this isn't the intention, but this feels like a bait and switch. The impacts for residents all through Encore and Edison. What I hear from Chuck is that townhomes are still a possibility there. So you just I just read a bunch in a row, but the density of section 1 and our townhomes still a possibility there.
The density of section 1 as it stands right now, that was.
Can you put the map up where you had the different sections, Chuck?
Oh yeah, well this is 1, this is 2. I can put that up so that everybody knows. We'll call it, this one is probably better. How about that one? So that was quick math here. 140, yeah. So right now, site 1 was 140 units per hectare. 405 apartment units were planned for that, or currently planned for that. That's basically the existing plan right there. So the change right now is to, like I said, take those 405 and split them up, half in this area and half in this area.
So I think just to maybe answer that question, for us to achieve that 405 density currently right now in that spot, townhomes wouldn't achieve that in that area right now.
No.
Mike, just to follow up on that, it's Margaret, but your existing plan would, as we've noted throughout this whole meeting, that the current plan meets all of the requirements, which is I think what you've heard from the entire membership of this meeting, is that we'd like to retain the current plan.
Yeah, and I think we're the density on site 1, I think is what I'm saying is that if we were to keep the density at 405, that we wouldn't achieve that density with townhomes.
So I think, I don't mean to cut in, but what I'm hearing is people asking that could a lot of that density be put on section 1 and then limiting the amount of impact in the rest of the neighborhood.
So split this, keep the townhomes here and still split the density and move the balance of it down here.
Or why not leave the apartment building up there? That's what the plan we bought into was.
Yeah, why not leave all 405 up there and we can just call it a night, guys?
But if the 405 is not saleable, we already know that townhomes aren't either. So that's not really an issue. So the plan we invested in was 405 up north there. So let's just leave them there.
I think the plan for the community is obviously to build it so that the community can function as a community.
Hang on a sec though, Mike. Sorry, it's Matt. I'm sorry to cut you off here, but the plan is to function as a community. But unless I'm reading all of this wrong, this was the plan submitted by Landrex initially, right? With the assumption that the 405 in zone 1 would still function as a community. Is that fair to say?
At the time that the plan was built, that was the intent of it. Yeah.
And that has changed where now if you kept 405 units up in zone 1 there, it would no longer function as a community. Could you expand on that? Because I'm not sure I understand.
It would still function as a community, but it would function as an open space for a long period of time. And so I think that's what I meant by functioning as a community, is that we want to provide build forms for the community so that we don't have open and empty spaces within the community, that we build out as the market demand sees fit.
A comment from Lizette in the chat. If section 1 can be moved to 55 square foot lots and 134 townhouse fit in a 38 square foot lot space, how does that math not make sense? Oh, single family, sorry, I was wondering about that. Just how I read annotations after numbers. So
we want to
move
read
to 55 single family and 134 townhouse fit in a 38 single family lot space.
I'm not sure I get it. You want to reread that?
I can just talk. Just as site 1 reduced from 405 apartments to 55 single family homes, so single family lots, there'd be 55 there. And then site 3 is currently 38 single family, and there's going to be 134 townhomes. So why couldn't you just move the townhomes up to that section 1 and remain the single family, just to keep the concentration of traffic out of that center core of the community, and it's still close to the commercial, it's still close to all of the roadways, and it maintains that community feel, as including Mike has mentioned. I understand the densities are required, but I just, it doesn't really add up, and it's hurting your current consumer market. Sorry, my kid's throwing something. It's not proving well with what's scheduled, because that's not selling. So I don't understand why you need to maintain the densities if that isn't what the market requires.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of questions in there, but in terms of transferring these densities up into here, I think from a numbers perspective, that would work. We could do that. From a density perspective, whatever we do, we can't reduce the total overall density. We won't be allowed to do that. We wouldn't get that passed. And so if the concern is for this apartment site, from a market perspective, if this is something that the number of apartments is saturated, and this is really not going to be able to be absorbed in 5, 10, 15 years or whatever that number is, who knows, then there is some concern over that from Landrex for sure. They have to make sure that it makes a lot of sense, and from a planning perspective, there's lots of land uses that can go in lots of different areas. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do that. So I think from what I'm hearing is that if there is a need for some density shifting, maybe there is a need to have a discussion and look at it. And I don't know. I think we can probably go back and see if there's other things that we can do. I'm not sure there is or there isn't, but I think that we're hearing some messages from the public about what's going on. So definitely there's opportunities to look at the different sites and see what different densities we can go and see if we can do anything. I don't know. Mike, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think we kind of explained a bit of the why, a little bit of that. And so, if there are obviously solutions or some input on the proposed plan and how that could be better suited. We're definitely here to take in comments, and so we will go back and obviously look at it. And again, we had done that fairly extensively, and so we'll take a lot of these comments and do that again.
Okay, I'm just going to read a few more comments, and then we have some people looking to ask questions as well. So why do we have to eat increased density from site 1? The existing plan is not broken, correct? You'd have much less concern if the changes were away from existing residents. Margaret, comment?
Yeah, just there was some concern around zone or site 1 not having enough space for potentially townhomes. If you eliminated a little bit of the water, you would have that space. And just on my point above that we skipped, the townhomes, again, the Eve townhomes, I believe 4 or 5 are rented out and the rest are standing to be rented. So again, just want to reiterate and reemphasize the need for better, more robust market research, because I don't believe it's there. I don't think that what you have from a year ago is valid.
Mm-hmm. I can comment on the water situation, and Don will back me up on this, I'm sure, if he wants to, but there's no ability to change the water. There's a certain requirement for stormwater management. That site is sized appropriately for this area, and there's no room to take anything away from it. So that has to stay. In terms of the market, I think we've talked about that lots. Next. Gabriel.
Okay, thanks. Al, your question?
Hi, thank you. I feel like this is getting a little bit circular. So the question is, what happens with the information that you're gleaning tonight next?
Oh, that's a good question. One of the best questions we've had so far. No, it's not. So yeah, the purpose of this meeting is to get some public feedback and information about what the plan has proposed. We haven't made any applications, obviously. This is a pre-application meeting. So the general drill would be to take back the information, kind of get it, and see what we want to do with it. You know, I don't really know where that's going to go, but you know, there's been we're this far because there's a need to do something with site 1, and that's kind of the reality of it right now. And so I think there still is going to be a need to do something with site 1, and we have to figure out what that is. So we will definitely be going back and discussing it, and then we have to gather up all this information that we've heard, and then I guess decide. I don't know. I can't really tell you what's going to go on right now. You know, at some point in time, this will move forward and with an application to amend this plan, because site 1 is the 405 apartment units are something that definitely need to be addressed at some point in time, and so we will move forward, but we'll have to see what we do with this information.
And
Chuck, around this, but yes, go ahead, Lenore.
And Chuck, when you make your application, you'd probably be identifying what you heard, and if you were able to address some of the comments, how that was done, so that we could see. And you may or may not be, right? But you would try to identify that with the application.
Yeah, that's yeah, definitely.
You say there's problems in site 1. What caused those problems? Is it just like, Chuck, could you expand on that a little bit? You're saying something clearly needs to be done about site 1, the 405 apartments. Is there just no interest in building 405 apartments now that the rubber has hit the road, or what is it?
That's probably better addressed by Landrex, but the information I'm getting, I might be, it's a developer issue for sure. They look at the market and they touch on that, and then then they give us their direction as to what the market demands, and then it's our responsibility to try come up with something that makes some sense from a neighborhood planning perspective, meeting the policies and guidelines of the city, and the larger plans. And so it's a combination of a whole bunch of factors that go into creating a plan. In this case, the need for apartments was, I'm not really thinking that it was ever really there, but we did need to have some place to try to manage the requirements of the Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Planning Board, and making sure that we're meeting the guidelines that that they've set out for us. And so there's a whole bunch of ways of doing that. As you're seeing now, there's different ways of meeting those. This was at the time the best choice, and we did look even at that time at a bunch of different ways of meeting those targets. At the time, this was the best approach to go forward. And from what I'm hearing from Landrex is that the information that they've gotten is that the site is too big, as Mike was saying, for having a developer come out here and build the apartments, and then the market for apartments just isn't necessarily there. So they're looking at that site and saying, well, what can we do, and how can we move this forward and keep this going in a good direction for the benefit of the neighborhood? And this is where we're at, is trying to adjust that and still managing the policies that are in place for us, and the requirements that we have to do. So the suggestion right now is, okay, if we can't make the apartments work, what can we work that still fits in it? So we can come off of the apartments, still have some medium density in the way of townhomes, and still see what's going on, because we know that the mixed use site we know that's going to be going ahead. We know that there's some opportunities there. It's appropriate. It's next to the transit. It's next to commercial, the highway. There's lots of reasons why that site is moving ahead. It's got a lot of different characteristics on it. But we do need to do a little bit more work on this site. But that's not changing it all to single family. We can't do that. We still have to balance some of those other needs.
So a few of the comments, what happened to site one? You can't sell 405 apartments. I think that is what you just addressed. It's good to hear that you're willing to reconsider site one as a result. Site three, creating problems in site two and site three as townhomes are not selling. The market isn't there for 63 townhouse and 134 townhouses. Question, do you have data on how many Water's Edge apartments are vacant?
It's definitely a Landrex question. Do you know, are you in touch with that, Mike?
No, I don't know the vacancy rate on that project.
So just to follow up on that, Margaret here, how can you then assert that there's no demand for apartments if you don't actually have data to make informed decisions?
We usually look to other developers and builders to provide us with that market analysis. They haven't provided us with any specific details. I'm sure that they have looked at that. I just don't know the specifics on that. We're not developing, or our intent was not to develop that site ourselves. Our intent was to develop the land for the builders or the developers that do that type of build form. And so that's the feedback we've been getting from those vendors for us.
Again, a follow-up. So vendors tend to not be as objective potentially as maybe I'll rephrase. It would be far more objective and valid for you to actually do the market analysis, the data piece yourself, rather than relying on secondary information that you're getting from vendors, which is colored by their own self-interest. So again, to my point, market research, data analysis to actually have good informed decisions that are, sound and valid and supported by data.
Thanks, Margaret. Are there any other comments or questions? Ryan.
Hi, I guess this is just kind of for Chuck. You've mentioned that you've heard from everybody here, and you've mentioned that you guys are still going to, go forward with this. I mean, you've mentioned that it's good for the neighborhood or the community, but you're hearing right now that everyone pretty well north of Neil M. Ross Road is opposed to these proposed changes. You know, we're all not, it's going to affect us negatively is what we're saying to you. Is this still something that you're prepared to move forward on and not have any concessions at all?
Well, I didn't say not have any concessions. I don't know what that's going to look like. What I said is it's unlikely that the apartment site, the 405 units, would stay that way. I think the information that we've gotten from Landrex is that, and the information they've gotten is that the site, the way it is right now, is not working, and it's not expected to be a great site for the upcoming future. So something needs to be done. And that's really kind of where we're at. I think at some point in time, we have to figure out how to move forward to manage that and deal with that. And I think what I said is that we want to go back. We've heard lots of people. We want to go back and see what this means in terms of what we can do with that site, what the comments and information are that we received, and see how we want to manage that and deal with it.
Okay, well, I think that's good, because you know we are the only people, the only residents there currently, right? So you know that this negatively impacts us, and I believe that, you know, I kind of echo Margaret's comments that, you know, the market evaluation definitely needs to be revamped. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Ryan. Also, Kathy and Tom agree with Dr. Margaret's proposal to reevaluate the market requirements. And Al asks, is there a deadline to meet your density obligation?
No, there is no deadline to meet density obligations. What it is it's a framework that's put forward by the Capital Region Board, Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board is what it's called now. And so what they do is they set that density requirement out. We create a plan that meets that, and then the plan goes ahead and evolves and tries to meet those targets that have been set out and approved in the density. And you meet those targets by applying the proper zonings that are expected in the plan, and then moving forward and trying to develop it. And they're targets. I mean, they're not something that is absolute. You know, when we get these targets, we basically have a pretty good idea of what these densities are going to be, but things, you know, in terms of the overall construction and built form, there are some adjustments that go on based on developers' needs and whatnot. So you look at some of the density targets and requirements in a given zone, and there's a range. So, you know, it could be, you know, anywhere from X to Y, right? And as an example, there are 3A is like 40 to 94. So that's a big range. It's a big shift, right? But overall, we have to try to pick these zonings and pick these land uses so that overall we've got a reasonable expectation that we're going to get fairly close to what we said we were going to do.
So it's fair to say, thanks for that explanation, by the way, Chuck. It's fair to say that the original plan met those, and you don't have a timed requirement to change that plan. So if we left it like it was, the market could change, because we're all anticipating market change, to make your construction favorable. 405 unit, right?
Yeah, but we still, right now, if nothing changes, the plan doesn't change. We still have basically a plan that tells us we want to go forward and we want to create so many units within this whole area. And so what the time frame is for that construction doesn't matter. You know, the planning in place doesn't set out that it has to be constructed in 5 years or 10 years or 30 years. All it says that is that if you are going to move forward, this is the path that you want to go down to move forward with. And if in so many years, if something happens and say, well, and that's why these plans change, you go down the path and say so many years and you know, we're not finding that people are buying into this plan, there's a need to change it, and you go look at it and say it makes some sense to change it, and we change it. And that's been the evolution of planning for a long time in land development in the city. I know we started a long time ago changing multi-sites into single-family sites because they were all developed as multi-sites and there was no market for them. They all got changed to single-family, and then the market changed and there was a more demand for multi-sites and gave them up. So we started creating more multi-sites. We created lots of school sites and there was no demand for school sites. So those are now turning back over and becoming multi-sites. So these things, you know, they're evolutionary. We create them to the best of our knowledge and best of our ability today for what we know and what we can forecast. But things change. You know, that's kind of that's the reality of where we live.
So on that note of timing and planning, Candace's comment, with forecasted 2025 build on our community, I think this amendment is not required. It has no benefit for Landrex to pull the project at the stage as it is still planned. Are there any other clarifying questions, comments? And again, if something comes to you after the meeting, certainly feel free. We can post the emails again. You can contact Chuck and he'll direct your questions to, actually I can put in the chat box as well. If something comes to you, I know it's a bit of pressure that you have to sort all your questions out in this limited time.
Mm-hmm.
Will the recording of this be available?
So we are recording. That was a question for the team. Do we have space to post this recording?
That I don't know what that is. We have to submit this information to the city, and Lenore, you can
Chuck,
comment.
can you post this? Could you post this on Landrex's website after this particular recording so people can see it? Because you had a link to.
Yeah, I don't see why not, as long as our websites have capacity, so I don't see why not.
There you go.
Great. I will admit that I started the recording a couple seconds late because I was trying to admit everyone who was coming in. So very first slide of the presentation is a bit cut off, but there is a recording of the entire presentation that Chuck did earlier, so you can get that information and the whole discussions. Yeah. Chuck's information is recorded, and then the discussion is certainly recorded, so we can post that.
And Chuck, do you have a screen with your email at all?
Yep, I can put that on here.
Yeah, and I copied it into the chat as well if someone would like to. It'd be easier just to copy it out of there.
And Eric's been kind of quiet, but yes, I'll send it to Eric too.
Ideally right now would be to Chuck because it's a pre-application meeting, and then you can certainly copy Eric if you wish. And then when we get an application, then we will be doing a mail out to those who are within 100-meter radius of the amendment areas. If there's anyone on this call that maybe didn't get one of those letters, maybe double check with Eric to be sure you are on a future mailing list, so you can continue to be notified about the proposal.
Right, so questions about general planning process and the mailing list would go to Eric at the City of St. Albert, and questions about this project would go to Chuck.
That's good.
I'll copy this so we know. There's a request for Eric to add 28 Encore Crescent. Actually, all these addresses, I won't read out all the addresses, but we will have record of all of this. Just in case Eric isn't seeing it, I'll make sure he gets information.
Looking at those addresses, they're all within the radius notification area. So they would all be, if you got a letter originally already about this, then you're on the mailing list.
I don't think all of us did. That's why we're adding our addresses in here.
So one thing may or may not have happened is if your land title is not with the most current address, because that's what we base it off, the land title feed, then that may be what has happened.
Yeah, perhaps we are too new. I'm not sure.
But great, we will do a cross check. So that because we do want to ensure you are kept up to this application, what's going on. So thank you for that.
Is that it, Gabriel?
Yes, I'm not seeing any more questions or comments. We do have a couple more minutes if anyone has any last remarks, but thank you everybody for sharing in this format and being respectful of the format. We really appreciate that, and voicing your concerns. Of course, we've recorded everything, not only the meetings being recorded, but we also have a court reporter taking a transcript of this meeting. So we have good documentation of everything that was shared. So thank you again.
Yeah, and I'd like to echo that. Actually, I thought it was a really good meeting. I'm really happy that there was quite a few people that came out. I mean, best thing that we can do is have nobody come out, but that's rarely that happens. I think there's some really good comments. Very, very happy with how respectful everybody was with their comments and how well actually you displayed the information that you wanted to get across, and really appreciate that. This is kind of the first kick at a Zoom meeting for some of us, for me. So it's interesting approach to it. Anyway, certainly appreciate all of that, and we'll take all that information back and cipher it out and see what happens. Mike, you have any closing remarks or anything, or Lenore?
No, I echo your comments. I think this is a great chat. You know, we, like Chuck said, I think we are going to take all the comments, you know, into consideration. You know, we understand that everybody is currently living there now, and we take that into consideration, and also the consideration of the future residents going into the community as well. So all of that into account, and you know, I'll sit down with Chuck and we'll take these into consideration.
No, I thank everyone for their time tonight, because it is a big commitment to come and you know, hear what's going on, and also express your comments and thoughts, and so I value those. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll close the meeting.
Could I just add
yeah.
one more thing, Gabrielle? Lenore, sure. Mike, you guys, on behalf of Landrex, you guys have built an awesome neighborhood. Chuck, you made a really good plan a number of years ago, and it's been amended well. We all bought into that. So thank you for that, and we'd like to keep the investment that we bought into.
Thanks.
There's just a comment about if the chat's in the recording. I'll have to double check that, but I understand the concern about addresses being in there, so we can just trim the recording so that this section where people are posting their addresses is not included. I don't think there's been any project information that's been shared since the sharing of addresses. Thanks for mentioning that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We'll close this meeting. Have a good evening, and thank you so much.
All right, thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Good night.